solve it, but anyway. Verner.
Well, yes, I think that the message that we got from the anonymous rider shows clearly that those who are racing are not comfortable with the current situation. They feel treated badly by the UCI, and they are uncertain about how it is run. That is, of course, something that needs to be taken seriously, but it is, from my perspective, extremely difficult to see a way forward in a situation where, well, it is a private enterprise. It is professional sport. We have riders who are caught doping within a system and are subjected to penalties, as I said, pretty tough penalties. On top of that, then we see athletes being effectively banned for life. Now, the problem is, of course, we could all, I'm pretty certain that all with an ethical mind would say, this is not correct. It should be so that if you have a penalty of 2 years, then you are back after 2 years. But given that it is a private enterprise, then, as Pat McQuaid so delicately had put it around Rasmussen, there is no rider who has a God-given right to race in a Pro Tour team, meaning that he has himself to try to persuade a team to take him on board again. And in this climate, that doesn't, that seems extremely difficult, and perhaps even without the UCI's recommendations against certain riders. But how to solve this? It's easy to point out the problems, but how to remedy the problems is really difficult. And I would love to hear Floyd's comment on how to do this. As it is now, the media plays a role by this vilification that makes it difficult for professional teams to re-engage athletes. But so they play a part, but you could also go and say they should then start being a little more level-headed about this and understand that it's a systematic rather than a personal problem. When you meet these riders who've actually been caught doping, then and speak with them for a day or two, then you realise they are actually human beings with reason and things. So, but that's not how the media works. Unfortunately, that is another thing that is a problem that is not easily solved, because vilification of athletes is also something that sells in the media and all that. So it's a huge problem, and I would love to see people come up with solutions to it. I'm a little bit short of it here.
Well, certainly I don't pretend to have the answer to how to deal with it, how to get the media to be more objective about how broad the problem is, rather than focusing on any given athlete that's accused, because that's all they had for the moment. And I'm somewhat guilty of it myself in the way I went about explaining the things that I experienced, because anytime you tell a particular anecdote or a particular story, that becomes the subject of whatever is written about, when the reality is that the problem is much more broad, and the athletes that have decided to use performance-enhancing drugs are doing so on a regular basis, and there's no sense in pointing out a particular given instance where that happened. Michael Ashenden and I were talking earlier about how much more complex, as time goes on, the doping techniques are going to become, and how much more difficult it's going to be to determine whether someone is doped or not. Of course, there will always be simple ways around the rules, and then there will be complex ways. But one thing for certain is, I believe most people in this room are here because they care about cycling, they care about it in the sense that they enjoy doing it, whether it's racing or whether it's riding your bike down to the gas station and eating candy bars, which is my favorite thing. But the fact of the matter is, it's a subject that is not going to go away anytime soon. It just happens to be that we're at the beginning of a public, we're at the beginning of a place where we've gotten to now where we realize we have to deal with it. So ideally, whatever the answer is, we need to accept that this is going to be something that's going to exist indefinitely. There is never going to be a solution. And so to single out a particular rider here and there every 2 months or every 2 weeks or however often it is and tear them down and say, look what we're doing, we're fixing the problem, is in fact counterproductive because it hurts the sport. It makes the reputation of everyone else, whether they're guilty or innocent, tarnished because of that. And we can't ignore it, but we also have to accept that it's here to stay. And whatever way we come up with to deal with it, we also have to try to remind people what the beautiful part of the sport is in the first place. And so, I wish I had an answer. I wish I could say it's easy. It's going to become more complex, but at the very least, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that cycling, like a lot of other sports, provide value to people that are watching or that are participating because it's something that sort of mirrors life and it's not scripted. It's not a television show where somebody wrote the script out. The problem is if you have an agency that's dealing with the doping problem that doesn't do so fairly, that doesn't do so in a consistent way, then it might as well be scripted, and then it becomes something that we didn't want it to be in the first place. So at the very least, I think we should all, at this point, accept that the problem's here to stay, but we need to work towards some sort of solution that doesn't destroy the sport in the process of trying to fix the problem.